Welcome back, my friends, to the Space Gulag. Today we're back with another Star Wars theory. Today we are doing What if Ki-Adi Mundi trained Anakin Skywalker? I'm really excited about this one. I think this one has a nice twist on it. I've been talking about it in our Discord chat for a little while, so go check out the Discord chat down below. Also subscribe if you want a chance to win a free lightsaber. Subscribe to these awesome channels. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's kind of get straight into this theory and what we are going to be talking about here. So back to our train series today, where we have different Jedi train Anakin Skywalker. We're going to uncover what could have happened if Jedi Master Ki-Adi Mundi trained Anakin Skywalker. Now, Ki-Adi Mundi was born in 92 BBY and eventually rose to the ranks of the Jedi Order. As he made his way to the High Council, Ki-Adi Mundi is characterized by everything that the Jedi Order is in his final years, before the fall of the Republic. Ki-Adi Mundi's kind of a straightforward, no emotion, he had like several wives and didn't even care about them type of person. So we're gonna go with that idea going into this story. And the story begins a few days after the battle that took place on Naboo. Obi-Wan beat Maul and was told by the council that it was deciding what they would do with young Skywalker. And though it was possible that any master could teach Skywalker, it was the decision of the council to have Jedi Master Ki-Adi Mundi take on the teachings of Anakin. Ki-Adi didn't ask for this role, but he accepted it. The council believes that Anakin needed someone like Mundi to teach him. Considering that Ki-Adi Mundi was so strict to the Jedi Code, the council thought he'd be able to help coax Anakin into the perfect Jedi. Considering Obi-Wan wasn't even a knight, and he was taught by the Order's most open-minded individuals, they needed someone to turn Anakin into the Jedi they wanted him to be. The council would inform Kenobi about the decision and force their way into Anakin's life without any warning. Ki-Adi Mundi wouldn't introduce himself to his apprentice for months. Anakin felt completely abandoned by the Order. He was behind his peers and when he began, and only to pass them in a few weeks, months, and become superior to them with that. With no show from Kenobi and the ever so transparent council members that watched over his training, Anakin didn't feel like he had a soul to help him. He was being bullied by the younglings he was surrounded by, and all he felt was betrayal. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, was beginning to lose faith in the Jedi. He felt like he broke his oath to Anakin and his promise to Qui-Gon. He may have resented the idea of having an apprentice thrusted upon him, but in reality, he wanted to keep his promise to his master. The worst part for Kenobi is that he felt betrayed by someone he knew on the council. It was years prior. Jin, Mundi, and Kenobi had to deal with the Nebula Front terrorist organization after their failed assassination attempt on Supreme Chancellor Valorum. For Kenobi, he believed he could trust the council. He got relatively close with Ki-Adi Mundi, but he never realized how cruel Mundi was. The issue is that he wasn't cruel, but he represented every failure of the Jedi Order. During this brief period, before Anakin met his instructor, he felt nothing but pain and suffering. He didn't dream of Padme. He dreamed of being free of his suffering and the suffering in the Order. Anakin thought of his mother, and he missed her dearly. He wished he had never left Tatooine. Slavery was much better than the eternal suffering he felt here. As the months passed, Anakin would continuously be held back. Ki-Adi Mundi didn't do much to influence the instructors to allow Anakin to progress past his class. Anakin continually sat at the top of his class without anyone even coming close to the power he had grown into. The instructors were unaware, though, that Anakin was progressing so far because of all the darkness within his little mind. Tragically for Anakin, he didn't realize this either. When Anakin wasn't being the best in any of his training, he was building things in his room, constructing, or he was just sneaking out into the lower levels of Coruscant. Anakin wanted adventure and he sought out to find it. When he went into the lower levels, he felt alive. They were always his people. The scum of Coruscant's underbelly were like the scoundrels that frequented Mos Eisley. Though this fun would end for Anakin when his master was introduced to him. When Ki-Adi Mundi confronted Anakin, he was a bit taken aback. Mundi towered over the boy and hardly made him feel welcomed. Mundi told the boy that he would be his master until he was ready to complete his trials. Ki-Adi Mundi didn't have much to say, and he didn't really wait for Anakin to say anything, as he turned and left Anakin's room. Anakin was even more disheartened. He cried in his room alone, and it was because he needed a father figure, not just now, but his entire life, and he never got one. He only got a man who had no care for him, and a man who had waited several months to even introduce himself to Anakin. The beginning of Ki-Adi Mundi's training for Anakin would be remorseless. Ki-Adi Mundi wouldn't be patient with Anakin, and he pushed Anakin to his limits. Mundi wasn't the Order's best duelist, but he was an efficient user of a lightsaber. Anakin wasn't extremely advanced within the time that he spent at the temple, but for the amount of progression Anakin had made, Mundi put him down for it. He didn't uplift him, he didn't make him feel like he had accomplished anything. After training with Mundi, Anakin would go back to his room and feel suffocated. He'd pace around his room, and he never felt listened to. Anakin would rage some days, cry other days, and give up hope the rest of them. Anakin's master made him feel ever so alone, all the time. Anakin wanted to leave the Order. He dreaded every day, but the worst was yet to come. When Anakin reacted to something emotionally, Ki-Adi Mundi would put him down. Mundi would make sure to diminish any emotion that Anakin harbored. The little emotion that ever came out was immediately suppressed. Mundi made Anakin feel stupid for having the need to express emotion. The suppression of emotions made Anakin resent his master and harbor anger for him. Anakin wanted to grow in his power so that he could make a fool out of his master. Anakin would progress much faster because of this, but it wasn't because he was any different. It was because he was harnessing the Force that was natural to him, the dark side of the Force. Eventually, after a few years, Anakin's brutal temple training would end. Him and Ki-Adi Mundi would be dispatched on missions across the galaxy. Mundi thought he was teaching Anakin everything he knew of the Force. Personally, to Ki-Adi Mundi, he thought that Anakin was appreciative of the way that Mundi had been teaching him. He didn't really believe his methods made Anakin resent him. Mundi and Skywalker would be dispatched to Kodai for a mission. They were there and they discovered a Sith holocron. On the Sith holocron, there was a disturbing message left behind about the rise of the Sith and the eventual downfall of the Jedi. Mundi was quite disturbed by this. He was the one who, after all, said that the Sith had been gone for millennia. Several more years would pass and the bond between Mundi and Skywalker wouldn't grow at all. Sadly, Mundi was quite fond of Anakin. He was hard on him, but he enjoyed having Anakin as a student. As for Anakin, he loathed his master. Anakin was cut off from his emotions, and he felt like a failure at every step, at every turn. The news came with surprise to the council members that Senator Padme Amidala's ship had been bombed when she landed on Coruscant. Mundi would meet with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine with another group of Jedi Masters, and when Amidala arrived, he would tell her that he didn't believe that Dooku would attempt to kill her. All the while, Chancellor Palpatine had been bringing Anakin closer and closer to darkness. As for the protection of Padme, the Council decided to pair her with Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was about a week away from taking on an apprentice by the name of Caleb Dune. Kenobi would eventually discover a plot that would lead him down a rabbit hole to Geonosis. Anakin didn't feel much over the almost death of Padme, but Anakin didn't feel much these days anyways. He had most of the emotion drawn out of him, though what was left inside of him was darker than even the rage and hatred that was within Palpatine himself. Skywalker and Mundi would await their next mission, but none would come. Because on Geonosis, Obi-Wan Kenobi decided that he would join Count Dooku. Dooku would be quite honestly surprised, but relieved. Obi-Wan left because the Council had treated him so poorly after the death of his master Qui-Gon Jinn. Kenobi also believed in what Dooku had to offer. If Dooku revealed who the Sith was, the two of them could wipe out the Sith forever. Though the clone army had been discovered and relayed back to the Jedi Council, they sent Master Yoda to Kamino. But there was never an invasion of Geonosis. Padme, after all, went back to Naboo and stayed hidden. As for Anakin, he felt the death of his mother through the Force, but didn't know what to do. He felt nothing but blinding rage, because He couldn't tell his master, and he didn't know how to express his emotions anymore because they had been suppressed for the past 10 years. He ended up talking to Palpatine about it, who would twist the boy's mind into believing that the Jedi allowed his mother to die. Anakin wasn't dumb, but he was easily swayed. He had no reason to defend the Jedi. They hadn't necessarily made him feel welcome. Palpatine came to Anakin's aid like a friend. The Jedi knew Kenobi went to Geonosis and that he had been captured, but how would they move on this? They decided that they would send Anakin Skywalker and Ki-Adi Mundi to rescue the Jedi Knight. Obi-Wan's refusal to take on an apprentice allowed him to progress efficiently in the years since Qui-Gon's death. It was very easy to say that both Anakin and Obi-Wan would be at the Revenge of the Sith levels of power. They would have progressed much further than they did in canon at this point. As the two Jedi made their landing on Geonosis, they snuck into one of the hives and found Kenobi and Dooku discussing their plan. But of course, Dooku had to unveil who was heading everything. Sure, it could be right place, right time, but Dooku had just released Kenobi from prison, and he needed to make sure Kenobi knew where everything was going, and the plan that surrounded everything. As Dooku unveiled that the clone army was ordered by him, and that he, as Lord Tyrannus, was being trained by Lord Sidious, otherwise known as Sheev Palpatine, Kenobi couldn't believe it. It actually made him want to distance himself from the Jedi even more, because the Jedi were essentially puppets for the Dark Lord of the Sith. Anakin and Mundi couldn't believe it. This upset Anakin even more though. He felt like everyone in his life was trying to use him as a pawn, use him like a slave, and he was tired of it. Watto, the Jedi, Palpatine, they were all trying to enslave him. Mundi reached over to his apprentice and put a hand on his shoulder and asked if he was alright. Anakin shrugged, and Mundi told Anakin that they needed to inform the council before they were captured, like Kenobi. Anakin nodded and the two of them snuck out. That was the first moment of actual intimacy or really care that Mundi had shown Anakin in Anakin's eyes. Because Anakin had emotions and Mundi didn't, Anakin felt like this was really the first moment in their relationship, in their student and master relationship, that allowed Mundi to feel like he was actually trying to help Anakin. They got into long-range communication with Coruscant and informed the Jedi that it appeared the clone army and the Chancellor were both agents of evil. They also informed them to act quickly, because it seemed as if war was on the brink of happening. When the comm ended, Dooku walked out with Kenobi and a swarm of Magna Guards. They surrounded the two Jedi. Mundi ignited his blade, expecting his apprentice to do the same, but Anakin backed away. Mundi turned around and realized the true failure of his teachings. The shock filled his face, but then he was distracted by Count Dooku, who pressed. Dooku told Mundi to surrender, but Mundi wasn't going to back down. He didn't want to leave his apprentice. It wasn't necessarily a feeling for Mundi, or how he would describe it. It was encapsulated guilt. He felt apologetic. Because defined throughout their relationship, Mundi realized that he had never listened to what his apprentice needed. It's not that Mundi wanted to hurt Anakin at all. He just wanted to make him the best Jedi in the eyes of the Order. Mundi didn't want Anakin to feel abandoned, but the entire time he abandoned Anakin at every turn. Mundi, though, he couldn't focus on this, because he couldn't not focus on Dooku, who was stepping towards Mundi and igniting his blade. The two would lock in a tense battle. Anakin would watch his master struggle against Count Dooku. When Mundi faltered, he would be knocked off his feet. Mundi was down, and Dooku stepped back as if he was going to kill the Jedi. Mundi didn't care about what Dooku was going to do, so he turned to Anakin and apologized for his inability to see how wrong his teachings were for Anakin, and how ignorant of Anakin's past they were. Mundi realized all of his failures as a master at this moment, and wanted Anakin to know how truly sorry he was for failing him. As Dooku dropped his blade down into the back of Ki-Adi Mundi, the Jedi Master died swiftly. Anakin looked down and walked away, but before he could get anywhere, Dooku reached out to him. Anakin was tired of feeling like he had to serve somebody, but Dooku told him that he didn't have to serve. He suggested to join him and Obi-Wan. Anakin was reluctant, but decided that it were a better fate than the remaining Jedi. In hyperspace, Master Yoda and a garrison of 200,000 clone troopers were making their way to return to Coruscant. Meanwhile, in the Senate building, a group of Jedi, led by Mace Windu, went to confront Palpatine. There were 4 Jedi. Egan Kohler, Kit Fisto, and Saesee Tiin were the other 3. When Palpatine realized that the Jedi had discovered his plan, he had to act now. A battle ensued in the Senate building between Palpatine and the 4 Jedi. Back on Geonosis, Kenobi, Skywalker, and Dooku were deciding on their next move. Their move to kill the Chancellor. They could prevent a galaxy-wide conflict if they avoided using the droid armies, especially if the Republic and Separatists knew this was a proxy war. It wouldn't matter what their objective was, though. Palpatine was able to initiate Order 66 to the incoming clone army. He lost to Mace Windu in combat, and even though he killed the other 3 Jedi, and Mace thought he won, Palpatine's grand scheme would come to work out. Master Yoda, who was aboard a ship full of clone troopers, was executed. Not immediately, it took several clones to do it, but the Grand Master wasn't incapable of dying. Dooku felt a disturbance in the Force. It wasn't that his master had died, or even his original master, Yoda, had died. It was the entire Jedi Order that had been wiped out. Scouts on Coruscant reported to Dooku that the Jedi Temple had been orbital bombarded into oblivion, wiping out almost all the Jedi in the galaxy. Few survived outside of the explosion that turned the Grand Jedi Temple into ash. The Republic descended into chaos. The entire Order was wiped out, and the Chancellor had been killed by the Jedi. It didn't matter what the Chancellor was, but the galaxy knew he was executed by a Jedi. On Geonosis, where the news reached the 3 former Jedi, they all pondered on what to do next. Dooku believed that they should lead the counter-offensive against the weakened, corrupt Republic. Skywalker didn't care for the Republic, so began to leave the planet. As for Kenobi, the Sith were gone, but so were the Jedi. His initial plan to return to the Order after killing the Sith had failed. He didn't care much for Anakin, so he let Anakin leave. Obi-Wan thought he should return to Mandalore, where his former love interest had been. Maybe she'd take him into her arms. Dooku decided to lead the Separatists against the Republic. The proxy war turned into a real war, and the Separatists going all in against the Republic. The clones stood little chance of securing a galaxy-wide victory. Without Jedi generals, Asajj Ventress and General Grievous would be able to tear through clone legions. Though the clones would serve the newly elected Chancellor of the Republic, who would ensure the Jedi would be hunted down and killed off, even in the midst of war. Anakin Skywalker would retreat into a planet no one heard of, and would become a hermit. Cut off from not only his emotions but the Force, Anakin was more than depressed, and from all of which that had transpired throughout his life, without a friend to rely on, he would fade out of existence. Kenobi would be able to happily marry Satine, who would live the rest of both her life and his life as rulers of Mandalore. As for Dooku and the Separatist regime, they would destroy the clone armies, massacring cadets on Kamino and securing Coruscant as the new ruling power in the galaxy. Dooku would become Supreme Chancellor for the remainder of his life, and he would lift the Jedi ban. Though, the few who survived would never admit to being a Jedi. And that's our story. That's the full story of what would have happened if Ki-Adi Mundi had trained Anakin Skywalker. I wanted to go with something different here. I didn't want it to be a grand battle between Palpatine. I really thought about it. I thought it would be a lot of fun to have Anakin at his full power, but I think that would be expected. And as you guys know, for those of you that watched this part of the video, where I kind of explained where my creative ideas came from, this really was seated in the idea that Anakin wouldn't get to that point in his life because everything in his life was going wrong. And that was the point I'm trying to highlight here, is that Ki-Adi Mundi wasn't like an awful person. He wasn't great. He was kind of a prick, but Ki-Adi Mundi would have wanted to teach his apprentice well. He, in Legends, had an apprentice that he really did care for, and he really wanted to not fail that apprentice, and that apprentice ended up leaving the Order, much like Ahsoka for Anakin, and he felt like he had failed that student of his. And that would be the same case here. I feel like Ki-Adi Mundi would, at the end, realize that he had failed Anakin. Instead of listening to his apprentice and instead of understanding where his apprentice was coming from, he would fall short of understanding what it was that Anakin truly needed from a master, and that was a father figure and someone that actually cared about him. For Mundi, he didn't really understand this, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to highlight throughout this video, is that he never listened, and the one time that he did want to listen to Anakin, it was too late. It was too late for Anakin to really want to give him a shot, to give him a chance to actually listen to what he needed. And that was kind of the tragedy in this. The tragedy is that Anakin, in my mind, dies of suicide, and I didn't want to say that specifically, but that's what I had in my mind when I said faded out of existence. I think Anakin wouldn't be able to live with the life that he led. Everyone that he loved and died, and he didn't even care for Padme, and he was cut off from his emotions, and he was cut off from everything. So I think that was the fate of Anakin. While there was still a chance for a happy ending for Kenobi and Dooku having been the ruler of the Galactic Republic, I think that adds an interesting twist at the end of the story. Anyways, though, I hope you guys did enjoy this. This was a lot of fun to make. I enjoyed this one. Definitely an interesting one. Lots of twists and turns in it, but I always like to try and keep it interesting for you guys. So tell me what you thought down below. Tell me if you guys liked it or not. Don't forget to join the Discord. As we approach 10K, even faster every day, I'm going to be giving away 3 lightsabers, so hit that subscribe button. I think I just said something about Discord. I don't really know, but check out the Discord. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun there. Send memes, talk about what ifs. I hint videos for the future while I'm writing them. I talk about them while I'm writing them, and I hint at what I'm doing. It's a lot of fun for the people that are in the chat. There's also roles for people. There's a Jedi ranking system, so it's a lot of fun. Also subscribe to these awesome channels. Anyways, guys, I love you all. Spread the love, and always remember, may the Force be with you.